Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Rebirth of the Red Dragon. Self-discipline becomes stronger. Chapter 71. The skirt on her body immediately turned into silvery dragon scales, and the thick dragon tail and dragon wings stretched out. In the blink of an eye, Katarina transformed back into the silver dragon body. At this time, the desert werewolves of the Lenya tribe discovered that there was still a silver dragon. But why would silver dragon be with red dragon? It's much pleasing to the eye like this. Shilin touched Katrina's head and said. I said how weird it was. It turned out that Katarina was too young to discourage her with my hands. Katarina. Feeling Shilin's touch, Katarina's eyes showed happiness. It turned out that Big Brother still likes own dragon body. Just say that such an ugly human body, how could Big Brother like it? The relocation of Noxus is not very difficult. After all, Noxus is currently not surrounded by walls. Only people need to be taken away, so food like horned lizards can be taken away directly. The rest is Shilin's own treasure, and it's all done in one bite. It's safer than anything to transport it in the stomach. Today, the entire Death Desert is completely owned by Noxus, and it is all the territory of Noxus. However, because the number of Noxus monsters is not very large, it is impossible to guard the frontier. Now the frontier guards are empty, and it will take some time before they can stand on top of them as monsters. But Shilin had an idea. He planned to set up a post in the frontier. Set up one at a certain distance and send more than 1,000 monsters. Each inn will be assigned several, and the inn will be replaced in turn according to the time. In this way, even with a small number of people, you can pay attention to the frontier situation while changing the post. The only bad point is that there are too few Noxus monsters. Even if it is just 1,000, it will cause a huge reduction in the number. No way. Who said Death Desert resources are too scarce? Life has very few monsters here. This is already the largest number of subordinates that Noxus can conquer in the Death Desert. Otherwise, why don't you think Shilin didn't kill the provocative own monsters one by one? No way. The Noxian Empire needs these forces too much. There were tens of thousands of monsters in the early stage of the establishment of the Red Dragon Empire of others, and I barely managed to reach 5,000 here. The Noxus monster walked on the ground, leaving a long scratch on the desert land. While Shilin and Katarina were naturally flying in the sky, Olena stayed on Katarina as always. Olena's expression is no longer the fear of closing her eyes. Although she is still very scared, she has already dared to open her eyes and look down occasionally. The speed of the dragon is very fast, and the speed of the monsters is unsatisfactory. It was almost an hour before Shilin and the others arrived at the Lenya tribe that the monsters arrived here panting one by one. Your Lenya tribe is doing a good job, Mutu. Shilin looked around and said. I have to say that the supplies of the Lenya tribe are very good. The houses here are all built by Mutu. You know that other monsters are reluctant to chop wood. They basically pick up some withered weeds and cooperate with a piece of stone to build a small nest for picking up the leek. No, it's Noxus, Your Majesty. Mutu shook his head. Now there are no Wolfang tribes, they are all children of Noxus. You are quite clever, Shilin complimented slightly. Being able to speak is something that subordinates must learn. There is no superior who dislikes compliments from his subordinates. It's just that Shilin hates words that are too hypocritical. Tell me about the forest conditions closest to this. Shilin sat down and looked down at Mutu. Your Majesty, the nearest forest requires a werewolf to walk 1 day and 1 night. That forest is called the Ionian Forest. I heard that it is also the site of a giant dragon. Mutu said. Ionia, dragon. Shilin raised his brows at hearing. How could there be such a coincidence? I just established the Noxus commander of the Death Desert on my own side, and you brought me in Ionia. Yes, Your Majesty, it's just rumored that it is the site of a giant dragon. As for what dragon it is, I don't know. But it looks like the dragon allows us to trade with goblins. Mutu explained. That giant dragon was too mysterious. If it hadn't been for the desert werewolves who had indeed felt a wave of dragon power, they would have been impatient to attack the Ionian forest. Dragon. This is the troublesome place for Shilin. If it is a young dragon or above, you have to kneel when you meet it. But if you are a young dragon like yourself, you can crush it at will. Or the other party had just entered the young dragon, Shilin had certain confidence to fight. Compare the Death Desert. How big do you think the Ionian forest is? Shilin had to figure out the size of the opponent's territory in order to guess the opponent's strength. The Ionian forest is not as big as the Death Desert, only 1/2 the size of the Death Desert, but it is more abundant in resources. Mutu told the truth. Rich resources, that is to say, the opponent's strength is at least not weaker than ours. Shilin had a plan of invasion in his mind. The Death Desert is too poor, they need resources, a rich resource zone. If the strength of the two sides is not much different, the one who will be compared will be the ruler behind. I currently don't know what age the enemy dragon is. If you attack rashly, it is very possible to attract a powerful and terrifying enemy to Noxus. Big brother, do you want to send some wild dogs to have a look? Katarina suggested next to her. Although the dragon is proud, they will be more cautious when facing opponents of the dragon. Only the dragon knows the true power of the dragon. Do you think it is useful? The dragon doesn't show up. No matter how many puppies you send, it's useless. Shilin raised his head and looked at the location of the Ionian forest. He decided to grow up honestly, and by the way, open the treasure of the god of death, there may be unexpected gains. The Noxus Empire Center is established here, and there is a chance to change it. Shilin decided. If possible, he wants to establish Noxus in the Ionian forest. Understood, the monsters around said in unison. Afterwards, the monsters started to take action, picking up pieces of wood and starting to build houses and the surrounding city walls. Olena was cautiously avoiding the working monsters on the ground, her body was too petite. In front of a monster that is 3 or 4 meters high at every turn, it is simply a small point. Had it not been for Shilin's protection, she would have become the food in the monster's stomach a long time ago. Your Majesty, what can I do? Olena also wanted to help Noxus, but she was too weak. You, just don't make trouble. Shilin glanced at Olena casually, what this little guy could do. To put it bluntly, it is no longer qualified to let her shower herself with fireball. T. Olena wanted to cry without tears. She really wanted to help. Seeing Olena's appearance, Katarina said, is the magic I handed to you proficient? Oh yes. Only then did Olena remember that she still had the task of proficient magic, and immediately turned and ran to the clearing to become proficient in magic. Did you give her some magic? Shilin asked curiously. Katarina smiled slyly. I gave her all the current meeting. Whether she can comprehend it depends on her own ability, anyway, I think it's very simple. Shilin helplessly patted Catalina on the back with Longwei. We're dragons, and she is human. Isn't it the same? I think her magic talent is not bad, and now she has learned more than 50 kinds of magic in total. Katarina touched her back aggrievedly. Shilin didn't get angry and gave Katharina a roll of eyes. Had Arena not been the incarnation of the goddess of luck, how could she have learned so much magic at once? Night. As the Spike tribe joined Noxus. Noxus's efficiency is more than twice as fast as before. Now the total number of monsters up and down in Noxus is about 8,000. Including more than 2,000 unpowered monsters. Non-compatible monsters refer to monsters that are old, unable to move, underage, disabled, and unable to fight. According to the rules of the Death Desert, this kind of monsters that cannot fight because of their disabilities will eventually starve them for a month. If they starve to death, they will be used as food for their people. If there is no starvation, the monsters will obey God's will and continue to take care of the disabled monsters to die. No way, the Death Desert is so cruel. It is a lack of resources. Shilin didn't do that. Now Noxus doesn't lack food, and he won't treat the monsters who fought and disabled for Noxus. As long as you have left blood for Noxus, you will definitely let Noxus take care of your natural death. Only by doing this will the monsters fight for your lives even more. The surrounding city walls were almost half built within a day. Shilin held a barbecue banquet again, and at the same time he wanted to announce some new rules. Peeps, let's talk about the current situation of the tribe in Noxus. Shilin asked, sitting near the fire. Those who can be surrounded by this fire are all the high levels of Noxus. Yes, Your Majesty. There are now 4 tribes in Noxus, namely the Blade Tribe, the Tooth Tribe, the Sandworm Tribe, and the Wolfong Tribe. There are more than 1,900 attackers in the Blade Tribe, 1,000 in the Tooth Tribe, 1,000 in the Sandworm tribe, and more than 3,000 in the Wolfong tribe. The rest are incompetents. Peeps stood up, explaining the situation of the Noxian fighters at this moment. Well, I need to announce one thing now. Shilin's words reached every leader's ears. The leaders of the 4 tribes all raised their heads and pricked their ears, listening carefully. The first point, we Noxus only obey the strong. The weak are not qualified to stand in high positions. The position of the leaders of the 4 tribes, only the strong can be competent, try once a month. The monster with the highest voice in each tribe will challenge the leader of the tribe. As long as he wins, he can become the next leader. Shilin's words swept the entire Noxus, and the monsters all stared. They also have a chance to become a leader. Long live Noxus. Long live Noxus. Long live Noxus. Quote. The monsters are all cheering for Shilin's idea. This idea is really great. Second, any monster with talent in Noxus can be trained by Noxus, remember. If I hear a leader suppressing talented monsters in order to stabilize his position, then I don't mind having an extra food in my stomach. Shilin's sharp eyes scanned the 4 leaders. The 4 chiefs all lowered their heads and dared not look at this gaze. They could only gritted their teeth and said in the same voice, "Relax, Your Majesty. We will definitely not." Third, Noxus needs to expand. I think you all know this well. It is estimated that it will not be long before the new war will start in full. Now what I want you to do is to absorb the monsters outside and join Noxus. Regardless of social status, background, hometown, personal wealth, or race. Anyone can gain power, status, and respect in Noxus, as long as they can show strong enough. Shilin needs to recruit talents. He will not be as stubborn as ordinary red dragons. He would never recruit monsters or the like, he didn't care. He only cares whether this monster can bring value to him and whether it can enhance Noxus's power. Understand. The 4 chiefs continued to respond. After a while, Ramos asked, "Your Majesty, if it's humans, do you want them to join Noxus?" Did you not hear what I said? Regardless of the race, as long as you want to join Noxus, Noxus is always welcome. Shilin looked at Ramos and gave Ramos a strong sense of oppression. I understand. Ramos knelt down suddenly. From ancient times to the present, there has never been a monster empire for humans to join. Humans are just food and a tool for the monsters to vent. Shilin's move is undoubtedly the creation of the Western fantasy continent. No, the first hole in the entire multi-universe. Fourth, this is our Noxus Empire flag. From now on, the entire Western fantasy continent will be planted with the Noxus flag. Shilin gently drew a picture on the ground with his paw, and a pattern appeared. The 2 sides are like 2 axes, and the middle is linked by a helmet. This is the flag of Noxus and the symbol of Noxus. The eyes of countless monsters were attracted by this banner, which seemed to be the most sacred thing they had seen in their lives. At this time, countless monsters abandoned their original beliefs. Now they believe in only one, the great Noxus and the ruler behind it, His Majesty Shilin. Late at night, Shilin, Your Majesty, a voice sounded from behind Shilin. Shilin turned his face slightly and said, "Arena. Didn't you sleep?" "No, Majesty, but you, why didn't you go to sleep?" Olena came to Shilin and did it. "I just slept for 2 months, do you think I'm still in the mood to sleep?" Shilin teased. "I finally woke up from a deep sleep. It's you, why didn't you go to bed?" Shilin asked rhetorically. Olena hugged her legs with her hands, her chin resting on her knees. "I can't sleep." "Why, is it a new environment?" Shilin raised his head and looked at the sky. "No, I miss Grandma." Olena followed Shilin's gaze and looked at the round and bright moon on the starry sky. "Grandma," Shilin raised an eyebrow. "Well, I have depended on my grandma since I was a child. I heard from my grandma that she picked me up by the river. On my body was a small sign with Olena printed on it, so my name was Olena. But now Grandma probably already." Olena seemed to have thought of something. 2 lines of clear tears flowed from her eyes. "You don't have to think about it, the village is full of good fortune." Shilin didn't say much, because he didn't know how to comfort Olena. "If I had this strength at the time, I would definitely save Grandma Olena, but unfortunately I didn't have it." After all, he had only reincarnated as a dragon for 3 years, and his temperament was still a little closer to humans. Your Majesty, if you can, would you have a chance to let me go back to the village? Olenna plucked up the courage to ask. She really wanted to go back and see it again. Shilin heard the sound and looked down at Olenna. The huge dragon pupil stared at Olenna. Olenna had the courage to have the confidence to look at her. Sealai Forest. After the conquest of Ionian Forest is over, I will just go there. Shilin randomly found a reason, and said that he needed to go back. Anyway, he is also a dragon, and the dragon doesn't want to face. Thank you, Your Majesty. Olenna smiled, knowing that Shilin had promised her. His Majesty the Red Dragon, it doesn't look that bad either. You are my people, and the king's mission is to make his people happy. Shilin is a tyrant, but he is also a Mingjun. The reason why he named the Red Dragon Empire Noxus was to exclude conflicts between races. Who said that the Red Dragon and the Silver Dragon can't be together? Noxus has it. Who said that there are no humans in the Monster Empire? Noxus has. All of them can happen in Noxus. Your Majesty, I heard from His Highness Katarina that you were born less than 3 years ago. Olenna raised her head and looked up at Shilin, this tall and mighty body. It is incredible that a dragon can grow to such a majestic body from within 3 years. Well, it has indeed only been 3 years since it was hatched. Shilin nodded. Who said he had a system? Oh, by the way, there are also exercise clocking tasks. Thinking of this, Shilin hurriedly got up and walked to the open space in front of him, and started doing sit-ups and other movements. Your Majesty, what are you? Olenna got up a little surprised, and suddenly got up to do these exercises while chatting. As a human, Olenna still knows that this is a muscle-building exercise. Congratulations to the host for signing in and punching in push-ups, get bonus attack plus 50. Congratulations to the host for signing in and punching in sit-ups, get bonus physique plus 50. Congratulations to the host for signing in, punching in and squatting, gaining speed plus 50. Congratulations to the host for signing in, clocking in and running, getting a crit reward, 5-ring magic wand. 5-ring magic wand. Shilin didn't expect that he would even critically hit the building once, but it was a pity that he didn't use this magic wand at all. It is possible to give the magic wand to Olenna. The 5-ring magic wand does not mean that only 5-ring wizards can use it, but that it is suitable for use by magicians within the 5th ring. More advanced magicians can also use this magic wand, but if the magic used is too powerful, the magic wand will break because it cannot withstand the surge of magic power. When Shilin thought, a magic wand floated in front of him. The whole body was 2 meters long, and the water blue glass magic wand appeared in front of him. The magic wand exudes a faint icy cold, and the circular magic ball in the middle hides a huge magic wave. This magic ball is the most important part of the entire magic wand. If the magic ball breaks, even if the magic wand is alright, as long as the magic ball is missing, the whole magic wand will be scrapped. Water attribute. Shilin didn't expect the system to give him a water attribute magic wand. Magic wands can also be divided into elemental magic wands. Elemental magic wands have one advantage and one disadvantage. Take this magic wand as an example. The advantage is that when using water elemental magic, the attack power will be doubled. But if you use the elemental magic of the fire system, your attack power will decay a little. Overall, there are advantages and disadvantages, but the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Arena, the magic wand given to you. Shilin used his mind to control the magic wand and went to Olenna's eyes. For me, Olenna's eyes widened in shock. She hadn't seen such a beautiful magic wand before. When Olenna's trembling hands touched the magic wand, a icy force spread from her hands to her body. Okay, it's cold. Olenna's body trembled a little, she just felt as if it had entered winter now. Shilin came to Olenna, his arrogance rolled slightly, and the hot aura quickly covered the cold aura of the magic wand, bringing Olenna warmth and comfort. Thank you, Your Majesty. Olenna reacted and immediately thanked Shilin. Conquer it, Olenna, you can. Shilin cheered Olenna. The 5-ring magic wand already has its own simple consciousness. If the user's talent is not strong enough, she cannot conquer the magic wand. Moreover, this is the 5-ring magic wand rewarded by the system, and the quality is even better. You can almost hang a magic wand within 5 rings. Your Majesty, Olena's delicate white face showed a trace of firmness. She could. Behind her, there was Your Majesty cheering for her. The powerful belief collided with the magic wand, and a wave of fluctuations went outward. In order not to disturb the sleeping monsters, Shilin spread out the crimson dragon wings to block the outward impact. CC. On Olena's neck, frost appeared, and her eyes turned completely aqua blue. The long blue hair on his head fluttered with a trace of frost. She made it. Your Majesty, what am I? Olena was surprised at her own changes. You have surrendered to this magic wand. It recognizes you and gives you the power of frost. Shilin noticed that the magic ball had changed, and it was contaminated with Olena's breath. Since then, Olena has the ability to mobilize magic wands. Item: Frost Staff. Level: Spirit level Advanced. Function: can give the user the power of frost, turning her into an elf on the snow. Origin: it is said that it was created by the god of frost, but because of an accident it fell to the mortal world, and the magic ball was also hit hard. Seeing this, Shilin understood why this frost staff was so special. It turned out that it was originally a god-level magic wand, but because the magic ball was damaged, it fell from the god level to the spirit level, but it can swallow other magic orbs and return itself to the god level. It deserves to be given by the system, and it's impossible to get worse. Your Majesty, where did you get this frost staff? Olena was a little curious. After all, Shilin had been staying in Noxus and had never gone out once. And the magic wand exists in the human world. Monsters almost don't use magic wands, except for some sacrifices. The magic wands used for sacrifice are all designed by themselves, and the materials are taken from the bones of enemies killed by themselves. Last time I got it by Li in the desert palace, it was the treasure of the god of death. There are all kinds of mess. Shilin casually used death to find an excuse and flicked over. It turned out to be so. Thank you, Your Majesty. Olena bowed again and bent over to thank her. It is impossible for the dragon to take out some treasure from the treasure. Your Majesty is really a different red dragon. It is completely different from the legendary red dragon, except for this tall and mighty body. You don't need to thank you for the reward. If you want to thank me, you will kill me more enemies in the next war. If Shilin didn't need the frost staff, he wouldn't be able to give it to Olena. Kill the enemy. Can Olena do it? Olena is a little unconfident about herself. She has never killed a fish ever since she was a child. Yes, and we in Noxus never raise idlers. If you have nothing to do with Noxus, I will expel you. In order to inspire Olena, Shilin made some harsh words, hoping to warn Olena. In fact, even if Olena is a vase, he has no objection, because this was his original idea. If it weren't for Olena's special status, she would have, cough. Olena will work hard. Olena squeezed the frost staff in her hands, her rosy lips closed slightly, cheering herself on. Hope so. Shilin smiled slightly, then looked into the distance and said, well, it's late now, you should go to bed, and tomorrow you have to practice magic with Katerina. Your Majesty, may I sleep next to you? Olena looked up to Shilin with longing eyes, hoping that Shilin could agree with her. Of course, Shilin said it didn't matter. Great. Olena released the frost staff in her hand, and the frost staff quickly turned into a pendant and hung on her left ear. Olena hugged Shilin's dragon scales tightly in her hands, closed her eyes warmly, and two red clouds appeared beside her face. Is this the first time I am intimate with Majesty Shilin? Shilin didn't pay much attention to Olena's thoughts. He who ruled the entire Death Desert was not reconciled to slowly growing here. Otherwise, it would definitely tarnish the name Noxus. Noxus, there is only one way to open to the outside world, war. The way to make the world peaceful is that the Western fantasy continent is ruled by only one empire. Morning. Arena. Early in the morning, Katerina trained Olena like crazy. Katrina, who was still in a good mood, woke up and found that Olena was sleeping next to her big brother. I must have missed something at night. In order to retaliate against Olena, Katerina specially took out a few magics she had just learned to train Olena. Shilin smiled softly, looking at the surrounding scene. Katerina and Olena trained together to use magic. The surrounding monsters are carrying wood, casting a real city. Mutu. Shilin called out. Your Majesty, the humble and loyal wild dog under your feet is here. As soon as Mutu heard Shilin calling him, he came to him non-stop. In terms of our current Noxus forces, besides the Ionian forest, which other nearby forces can attack? The tail of the dragon behind Shilin moved and caught the falling stone. Your Majesty. An attacker knelt down in fear. Be careful yourself. Shilin put down the stones indifferently. Understand. The attacker quickly got up and moved away. The surrounding forces. In addition to the unknown dragon hidden in the forest, there is also a small human city-state. Mutu recalled. As desert werewolves who often trade with the outside, they are more familiar with the world outside the Death Desert than any creatures here. A small human city. Where is it? Is it far from here? Shilin had the idea of invasion directly. With the monsters of Noxus and his own strength, there is no problem in attacking this small human city-state. It's northeast of Noxus, not very far away. If you want to conquer there, it only takes a day to get there. Mewtwo saw Shilin's thoughts, and the threatening dragon pupils were full of aggression. Is it far from the Ionian forest? Shilin asked the most critical question. It's not very far, but if we want to attack this city-state, we can perfectly bypass the Ionian forest. Mutu replied. Shilin's eyes narrowed slightly and there was a problem. According to Mutu, why didn't the dragons in the Ionian forest invade this small human city-state? Don't tell me that small human cities have surrendered. The dragon does not allow another force to appear on its own territory, especially the human force. And dragons will not accept human surrender, they will only be the masters of humans. Raise humans in captivity, when they need them, and when to take them out for food. But it was incredible that this dragon could tolerate this. Shilin was a little bit suspicious of the truth about the dragon news. He must be true, but the other party is not clear. Western fantasy continent is not without incidents of pretending to be giant dragons. In the past, there were a group of monster tribes, because they were too weak. Always invaded by some forces. Therefore, this monster department couldn't bear it, lied that he had joined the dragon's family, and wanted all the surrounding tribes to submit. As soon as the surrounding tribes heard that there were giant dragons, no matter whether they were true or not, they all surrendered to this tribe. Finally, the monster tribe was promoted to the monster empire, and it was also named the Electu Empire. This lie lasted for 300 years, and finally an adult dragon came to challenge it before tearing the lie apart. This is also why the monsters now hear that the tribe joins to become the clan of the dragon, all of them don't believe it. After all, Electo's lies are really too much trouble. It has become something that every intelligent body in the Western fantasy continent knows. Mutu, is it possible that this is Electo's lie? Shilin always felt that the dragon in the Ionian forest was fake. Electo's lie. Your Majesty, this shouldn't be possible. I heard that many monsters in the Ionian forest have witnessed a giant dragon. Mutu felt that the dragon should exist, otherwise no monster would say that he had seen the dragon. Monsters witnessed it with their own eyes. Then I would like to ask you, since many monsters have seen giant dragons, why didn't even the color of the dragon appear? This is what Shilin most questioned. The monsters said they had seen a dragon, so why didn't it reveal what kind of dragon the dragon was? For example, when the Noxus monster fights, they will shout, for the great red dragon. This, Mutu didn't know what to say. As Your Majesty said, the descriptions from the monsters' mouths are all huge monsters, not even colors. Then, Your Majesty, are we going to attack the Ionian forest? The thoughts in Mewtwo's heart were also shaken by Shilin. Could this really be an Electo lie? No, all of this is just a guess. We need a 100% accurate result. Clean up Noxus for a week, and then fight the small human city-state. Since there are giant dragons in the Ionian forest, he shouldn't just sit back and watch. The corner of Shilin's mouth rose slightly. This is not just a war, it is a temptation. If it was really a giant dragon, he could not tolerate an attack on the forces near him. This would also be a kind of provocation. I understand, Your Majesty. Mutu nodded solemnly. Isn't it a dragon? We also have own red dragon, Your Majesty. 1 week is enough time for Noxus to recover its strength. During this week, Mutu led 500 desert werewolves to the Ionian forest to exchange supplies. And still not making a provocative action, peeing leaves a smell mark. As a result, it only provoked dissatisfaction with a few monsters who claimed to be members of the dragon, and no dragon came out to keep them. This made Mutu more convinced that he was fooled. This is simply an electo-lie of the new century. However, Shilin's order was not to act rashly. Mutu endured it and led the desert werewolf back to Noxus with weapons and supplies. Because there were so many materials needed this time, even the goblins couldn't come up with so many weapons and equipment. Resulting in more than 8,000 troops, only 5,000 can wear armor and equipment, and more than 3,000 can only fight empty-handed. But this is also their lack of strength. Monsters who want to wear equipment must use their strength to prove that they are worthy of the equipment. The loser can only be a cannon fodder honestly, standing at the forefront of the team, testing the enemy's strength. Your Majesty, the dragon in Ionian Forest Lee still has no response, and at the same time, the goblins who traded with us seem to be aware of the smell of war. I also asked if the Lengya tribe wanted to launch a large-scale war recently. My answer is that I am going to conquer other tribes in the Death Desert. Mutu reported to Shilin what happened during the trip to the Ionian Forest. Yeah, Shilin closed his eyes and replied. Peeps next to him also immediately said, all the fighters in Noxus are ready to attack at any time. Shilin opened his huge dark red eyes, slowly got up and stood up. The 30-meter-long body was full of sight, exuding domineering, making all the surrounding monsters kneel and surrender. Countless arrogance beating on the dragon scales, like fire elves, volatilizing their own hot aura. The curved and swept dragon's horns are beginning to be sharp, like a crown made of rocks. Noxus. Conquest. Shilin's roar spread throughout the empire, finally. After only a week of training in Noxus, a new war began. Noxus is invincible. Long live Noxus. Wherever you go is Wangtu. Countless monsters cheered, and no monster had fear in his eyes. They are the chaotic and evil species, yearning to fight and fight. In addition, I heard that this time it was a small human city-state that was going to be attacked, and all the monsters were excited. The monsters can already imagine what happened after they conquered the small city-state. Think about it, it's about to explode. Shilin nodded in satisfaction. He hoped very much that the monsters' fighting spirit would be the only way to survive the war. Big brother, I want to go too. Catalina came to Shilin and rubbed the dragon scales on him, begging Shilin to agree. In order to be quick and efficient this time, Shilin decided to lead the team himself. A total of 6,000 monsters set off with him. After he left, Noxus would definitely fall into emptiness. At this time, you need a trustworthy and powerful person to guard Noxus. After thinking about it, Shilin decided to let Katrina guard Noxus. Other tribal leaders must follow him in the battle. And Olena is not strong enough, and she is still a human being. Even if she is strong, the monsters will not necessarily listen to her. Ever since, the best candidate is Katrina. Katerina, you have to carry heavy responsibilities on your shoulders. Shilin refused Katerina's request. Just kidding, a giant dragon came to guard Noxus, more relieved than anyone else. Although Katerina's strength is not outstanding among giant dragons, it is also a giant dragon. I understand, I just think it's boring to stay in Noxus. Katerina sighed. In her opinion, how could anyone not long-eyed invade Noxus? Be obedient, and Akfer will be your deputy. Shilin raised his sturdy paw and touched Katrina's young dragon horn. Apart from Shilin, Akfer is Noxus's strongest combat power. If it weren't for Akfer not suitable for land combat, Shilin would definitely take him out. Yeah, Katerina nodded listlessly. Shilin didn't say much, the child's temperament disappeared after a while. Then big brother, why is Olena going too? You don't know her strength. Katerina stopped Shilin who was about to turn and leave, and looked at the young figure beside Shilin, Olena. When Olena heard that Katerina pointed the finger at her, she immediately buried her head nervously. Arena, she is destined to go to the battlefield. It happens to be a small human city this time. It can give her a little experience and exercise her courage. Shilin didn't lie to Katerina, he was talking about his own inner thoughts. Olena's magic can be compared to the three-ring magician, but she is too timid. The magic of the third ring is displayed, and sometimes it is not as big as the magic of the second ring. It just so happened that the target of the attack this time was humans, and Olenna could be trained from the basics, so that the ugly and terrifying monsters that were encountered on the battlefield would not be encountered. All right, Katarina has nothing to say. The main reason she wants to follow Shilin is still Olenna. If Olenna didn't follow, she wouldn't complain so much. Seeing Catalina settled down, Shilin gave Mutu a look next to her. Mutuxin understood. His sturdy hind legs were slightly bent, and then shot out like a spring, jumping to the high horn of the starting point. The horn of advancement is the highest point made by monsters with boulders. Whenever there is a war, the horn can be used to play its role. Wow! Mutu stood on the forward horn, raised his head, and howled at the Sirius, expressing an offensive and conquering meaning. Wow! Roar! Hiss! The monsters responded to Mutu Wolf Howl's call one by one, and marched toward the northeast. Shilin left the last party, and after a few words with Katarina, he flew to the sky with Olenna. Only the flame belt still burning on the route was left. In the sky. It looks like Olenna, your fear of heights has been cured a lot. Shilin found that Olenna no longer thought about trembling and screaming as before, but calmly looked down at the ground. Thank you, Her Highness Shekaterina, for helping me eliminate the influence of fear of heights. Take me to fly high in the sky every day, now I am not afraid at all. Olenna looked down at the monster army in excitement, the scene was too spectacular. Help you eliminate fear. The corner of Shilin's mouth twitched, and he guessed that Katarina was trying to avenge Olenna. Unexpectedly, accidentally hitting in collision, eliminating the fear of heights. Since you are not afraid of heights, then I will give you a little excitement. Shilin grinned. Exciting, Your Majesty, what is that? Olenna suddenly exclaimed. Shilin led Olenna to speed up suddenly, pierced through the obstacles of the clouds at once, and continued towards the heights. Soon I came to a dark place. What is this, Your Majesty? Olenna swallowed. Now there was a starry sky in front of her, but it was clearly morning. The highest point, the highest place on the Western Fantasy continent. Shilin stared at the star 27 ahead. Olenna followed Shilin's gaze and saw that the stars there seemed to form a 5-pointed star magic circle. Olenna's eyes widened, and she didn't know what to say for a while. This is the sky restrictions of the Western Fantasy continent, and it is also the restrictions set up by the gods. Only when the creatures of the Western Fantasy continent reach the gods can they break through the restrictions and wander in the starry sky. Shilin stretched out his dragon's claws and lightly tapped the 5-pointed star magic circle, and a wave of ripples appeared on the magic wand. Unexpectedly, there are such restrictions over the Western Fantasy continent. Olenna blinked. This was the first time she had realized all this. However, this restrictions dragon will be known when it is born and passed on through the memory of the dragon family. Well, so are you ready? Shilin asked. What, Your Majesty, what did you say is ready? Olenna was a little pity, and Her Majesty suddenly asked herself what she was ready for. Shilin held Olenna's right paw and tilted slightly. Olenna's whole body suddenly fell from Shilin's hands and fell towards the ground. What? Olenna was not calm this time, she closed her eyes and screamed. Even the idea of taking out the frost staff and using wind magic was completely thrown away. Shilin glanced at the magic circle one last time, and then pursued Olenna with the huge dragon wings behind him. Mid-air, Olenna felt the wind whistling in her ears, and she felt like she was going to die. The soul is almost flying out of the body. At this moment, she vaguely saw a red angel descend from the sky and stretched out her hand. Are you an angel? Olenna asked dumbly. No, I am Your Majesty. Shilin's voice pulled Olenna back to reality. He used wind magic to catch Olenna, and then his huge claws caught her. His Majesty. Olenna finally breathed a sigh of relief, and then a blush appeared on her cheeks, her legs were closed and she knelt on Shilin's palm, looking extremely shy. Just as Shilin wondered why Olenna was so shy, she sensed the warm feeling in her palm. Arena. Sorry, Your Majesty. Under. Shilin expressionlessly took his hand out of the sink, but his keen sense of smell could still ask about the smell. Sure enough, it's not a good thing to smell too good. I'm really sorry, Your Majesty. I didn't mean it. Olenna hid in the grass on one side, changing her clothes, and tossed her wet skirt aside. Yeah, Shilin nodded dully. Shilin wanted to talk about Olenna, but Olenna was doing this because of him. Hey, I knew I didn't play that much anymore. Your Majesty. Olenna walked out of the grass so shy, her steps were unusually careful. The one that was just taken off was a month and a half, but now she doesn't have a month and a half to replace it. So her situation is a bit special now. Be careful yourself. Shilin reluctantly stretched out his right hand again, allowing Olenna to climb up, taking her back to the sky, and catching up with the speed of the monster army. One dragon and one person fell into contemplation from the chat just now. Olenna was shy, Shilin didn't know what to say. Fortunately, the goal of their battle on this trip is a small human city-state, where there must be some clothes that can be changed for Olenna. 6 hours later, with Shilin's permission, the monsters entered a state of rest. During this period, they passed by the Ionian forest. Shilin also saw the whole picture of this forest, which was very beautiful. This is really suitable for the establishment of an empire, and he smelled the breath of a dragon. The nose between dragon and dragon is the most sensitive. In other words, there is really a giant dragon in the Ionian forest. But why didn't he show up? Is it because his strength is too weak? It's just how to occupy the Ionian forest if the strength is so weak. This dragon is full of mysteries. Shilin will go to find out sooner or later. After bypassing the Ionian forest, there is an endless plain in front of them, which is indeed a good place for living creatures. Your Majesty, this is a map. Mutu took out a parchment map from his waist, which he had specially exchanged from a goblin. Conducive to this battle. If there is nothing wrong with the 170 map, we continue to accelerate for another 5 hours, and we will be able to see the city-state of Acria. Shilin looked at this tiny map and analyzed. The city-state of Acria is the small human city-state they need to attack this time. Your Majesty, do we want to rush all the way directly? We don't need to rest in the middle, we can still arrive earlier. Ramos came to the side and suggested. No, Your Majesty, this consumes too much energy of the boys. Peeps shook his head and stood up to refute Ramos's opinion. Simon also agrees with Peeps's point of view. The boys need to rest, they are too tired. I understand this naturally. Shilin didn't understand it. Now it's no use rushing to rush over. The monsters don't have any physical strength anymore, and there is no strength to fight. Although he can capture the city-state of Akiria by himself, this is not his intention to bring the monster army. He needs to train the Noxus monster army through wars, let them experience every war, and finally one by one can become brave and good soldiers. Accumulate their combat experience. The order continues, the legion rests for an hour, and then moves on after an hour. After Shilin finished speaking, Mutu nodded and passed this sentence on. The monsters all collapsed on the ground when they heard it. Monsters are also creatures, and they are also tired. After 6 hours of uninterrupted walking, they were already too tired. Now that I can rest for an hour, I can't hold on to each one anymore, falling to the floor and falling asleep. I have to say that this is the monster army, far inferior to the regular army. Even if the core wants to rest, they shouldn't all sleep deeply. Instead, they should send some people to guard them in turn to prevent danger. Shilin didn't say anything at this time. These rules will be understood by the monster army in the future, and after this war, Shilin will also teach them what military rules are. After the monster army rested on the spot for an hour, it was ready to go again. Akalia City State 1. Princess Alice, run slowly. A pale-haired Marquis was chasing after him. Marquis Firth, you are old. Alicia turned her head and smiled. Alyssa, the princess of the city-state of Akalia, wears a yellow long dress and her hair is decorated with precious ornaments. There is a small white crystal pendant hanging under the earlobe, which looks extremely beautiful with a smile. The most important thing is her proud figure, enough to crush most women. The easy-to-hold waist is even more fascinating. Yes, Princess Eliza, I'm already 76 years old. Faith wiped the sweat from his forehead. Alicia sighed and looked outside the city wall. Am I really going to marry him? Yes, Princess Eliza, if you don't marry him, first must continue to wage war. At that time your father, the king of Akiria, will be in danger, and the city-state of Akiria will die. Faith also didn't want Eliza to marry such a person, but they couldn't be helped by the current situation. At this moment, a civil war is taking place in the city-state of Akiria. The army headed by the Duke of Pfister is shaking the status of Aklia's king. Aklia is the father of Alyssa and the owner of the city-state. Last month, the Duke of Pfister launched a mutiny, and Aklia urgently summoned an army to fight Pfister's side. The two sides fought on the same level. Just when the stalemate was at a stalemate, Duke first spoke. As long as Princess Alicia marries him, he is willing to give up. Aklia was tempted. The city-state of Aklia is just a small city-state, with a population of less than 100,000 people. Even though 100,000 people sound like a lot, there are only 20,000 combat troops. After all, human beings are not like monsters. They can be very powerful only by their own physical fitness. People who have not been tempered in strength can't kill a monster even if it is 100. Only let the monster slaughter. After the civil war in the past few days, there are only more than 10,000 soldiers alive, especially the civilians. Whenever the number of soldiers is reduced, civilians will be forced to take up arms and participate in the war. Civilians who have not undergone orthodox training are just cannon fodder on the battlefield. The city-state of Akyria is about to die in the civil war. If he can sacrifice his daughter in exchange for peace, Aklia is willing to do so. Because it's worth it. But Duke First is already an old man who is about to be in his 70s. How could Elisa be willing to marry such an old man? It's just that the national conditions can't let Eliza be willful, she has to marry if she doesn't marry. How good would it be if there were no wars? Elisa seemed to have accepted her fate, with her hands propped on her head, lying on the wall and looking into the distance. She is not an unreasonable person, she is willing to sacrifice herself in exchange for peace. Princess Alicia, I have wronged you. Faith sighed, why did Elisa suffer this way? If His Majesty began to listen to their opinions and curb Pfister's ambitions, then this thing would not happen. Fest was originally not from the city-state of Akyria, he was originally a scarred person. The star fell at the gate of the city-state of Akyria, and it was Akyria who rescued him. From the very beginning, FEI saw that Feist was not a good person, but when Akyria saw Feist was a high-ranking knight, he decisively recruited him as a royal knight. After 10 years of development, the royal knight has developed to the status of duke. And the duke can no longer satisfy his ambitions, he wants to be a king. Elisa frowned suddenly, and stretched out her finger in a puzzled direction. Marquis Faith, what do you think it is? What? Faith raised his head and followed Elisa's fingers, but saw nothing. Strange, I just clearly saw a dark mass. Alicia rubbed her eyes. She just saw a group of things like a swarm of ants rushing in, why is it missing now? It's an illusion, Princess Elisa, it's getting too early now, you have to rest instead. Fis only thought that Elisa had hallucinations because of her sadness. All right. Alicia also felt that it was an illusion, and she turned and walked into the castle with a sense of loss. Distance. Almost forgot to use secret magic. Shilin breathed a sigh of relief. The own monster army is aggressive, how could it not be discovered? Yu Hao Jiao is Shilin who uses concealment magic, and can use magic to wrap up the monster army. Use the reflection principle of the mirror to make others invisible to the real situation inside. It is about 10 kilometers away from the city-state of Akyria. I can already see the city-state of Akyria. Listen to Mutu's wolf howling early tomorrow morning, we are ready to attack at any time. After running for a day, Shilin certainly wouldn't be anxious to let the monster army fight. They were still exhausted at this time, how could they be on the battlefield? After a nap, it's time for war. All the monster army lay down one by one when they heard it. The monsters are so casual, they don't even need to camp. Take the sky as the quilt and the ground as the bed, and sleep on the spot. Olena fell asleep on Shilin's back, and she was almost exhausted today. The night passed in the blink of an eye. The monsters were awakened by this dazzling sunlight. As soon as Mewtwo opened his eyes, he saw a pair of Longmu Jontong already watching him. Puff! Mewtwo suddenly got up, and screamed to the sky, woo! Boom, boom, boom. The earth seemed to start to shake, and all the monsters who had wanted to sleep and regained their sleep were awake. The monster army united its direction and headed towards the city-state of Akyria. In order to declare their power, Shilin specially withdrew the concealment magic, and they Noxus came. Akylia City-State 1. Due to the recent civil war in Aklia, all the guards who were supposed to be watching the city wall were called down to participate in the battle. So the current Aklia does not even have a scout. Internal. Your Majesty Aklia, it was me Fist who was confused for a while, and I will never commit any more from now on. Fister stretched out his hand to apologize to Aklia. He is about 1 meter 8, and his whole body looks a bit burly, which is a symbol of the strength of a high-level knight. The hair has turned pale, and the wrinkles on the face are like a thread, countless. Originally, with the physique of a senior knight, he would not age 173 so quickly. It can only be said that after becoming a duke, he exercised less and less. Well, I hope Duke First is really just confused for a while. Aklia sighed deeply, turned her head and glanced at her young and beautiful daughter Elisa, who was wronged by her daughter. Fister smiled, but his eyes were all on Elisa. Your Majesty, I wonder if Princess Elisa can go back with me today. He has long dreamed of Elisa. When Elisa heard Feist's words, her face suddenly turned pale. This is not in line with the rules. Duke First, you must know that marrying a princess requires at least some wedding preparations. Akiria frowned, and Fister was too impatient. Farewell, Your Majesty, don't care too much about the wedding, as long as the last step is done right. If you can't bring back Princess Elisa today, I'm afraid the soldiers won't agree. Fister's words are a naked threat. If Aklia does not agree, he will immediately tear up the peace treaty. Akiria stood up furiously, pointed at Fister and didn't know what to say. He was simply leading a wolf into the room back then. No return on a good deed. Don't be so angry, Your Majesty, be careful not to see the scene of my marriage with Princess Elisa. Fister chuckled. He just killed Akli's fear of not daring to continue the war. Father, I am willing to marry Duke First today. Alicia hurriedly stood up. She couldn't let the civil war mess anymore. Otherwise, when the time comes, the city-state of Aklia will really be in vain. Elisa. Aklia stretched out her trembling right hand and stroked Elisa's red hair. Then Aklia waved his hand. Go. Then thank Your Majesty for your accomplishment. Fister smiled immediately, just about to reach out to search for Lisa's white wrist. It's not good. It's not good. A large group of monsters have been killed. A soldier rushed to the Great Hall. What are you talking about? Monster. Fist asked in shock. Where did the monster come from? We don't know, Lord Duke. We were cleaning up the wreckage after the war on the city wall, and we saw a cloud of mist rushing towards us in the distance. After we took a closer look, we saw a group of monsters. The soldier shouted in despair. Fortunately, Shilin is now flying in the sky with Olena, hiding her body, chbb. Otherwise, the soldier would have been fainted long ago. Fest, set aside the grievances between us for the time being. It is important to protect the city-state of Akiria. Akiria shouted immediately. Fister's eyes were uncertain, and then nodded unwillingly. I understand. If the city-state of Aklia is gone, don't even think of becoming a king yourself. Father, Elisa was a little nervous. She thought of the sight she saw yesterday. Can the city-state of Aklia really stop a group of monsters from attacking? Don't be afraid, the city-state of Akiria will live forever. Aklia put her hands on Elisa's shoulders and comforted Elisa. In fact, he had no bottom in his heart. After experiencing a civil war, the city-state of Akiria is almost dead. Let's go. Akli gave him a look when he passed the Marquis of Faith, and then left the Great Hall. The Marquis of Faith understood what His Majesty meant, and immediately told the 5 most worthy new knights about the task. City Wall. These monsters are actually more than 5,000. Feist never thought that there were so many monsters, and the city-state of Aklia might really not be able to hold it. Even though there are more than 10,000 soldiers now, it is difficult for humans to compare with monsters. Basically, to deal with so many monsters, human soldiers have to be 2 or 3 times longer to be able to hold them. How come so many monsters come to attack the city-state? Are they from the Ionian forest? Akli looked at the blackened area outside incredulously. No, the monsters in the Ionian forest are not that crazy. Fister shook his head. Soldiers. It is no longer a civil war now. It is now to protect the castle. Remember, behind you are relatives and friends. If the city is gone, everything will cease to exist. Akria quickly summoned the remaining soldiers and asked them to gather together to protect the city-state of Akria. The exhausted soldiers gathered in this area. With their current morale, they couldn't stop the Noxus attack at all. They just went through a civil war. Oh, Aclea can already guess the ending, and it will undoubtedly be defeated. It is difficult to hold even 20,000 soldiers, not to mention there are only more than 10,000 soldiers. Thinking about it, Aclea looked into the castle, and Alyssa left it to you. Chapter 81. The face of every soldier was filled with perseverance and fatigue. Aclea pulled out the king's saber on his waist and held it high. Aclea city-state will always hang down immortal. Kill. If the yelling of the soldiers were to spread around every corner, they would return to their own posts. The wall is still there, they are not, there is no hope of winning. Roar. Just as Aclea was about to lead the soldiers to fight in blood, a dragon chant that resounded across the sky swept across the entire battlefield. Countless soldiers who had been prepared stared at the sky with blank eyes. An incomparable dragon descended from the sky and reflected in their eyes. Fire reflected on the soldier's face, it was a red dragon. I declare that the city-state of Aclea is over. Shilin didn't want to say a word of nonsense. The flames on his body were like elves jumping around the body, and then gradually formed a hot ring of fire. The ring of fire of the feet spreads behind Shilin like a sea of fire, illuminating the entire Aclea Chengbang. No, great. Shilin took the lead before Aclea had finished speaking. The sea in fire, the sea in the fire. Sparks like a sea of fire fell from midair, like the end of the world. People's faces were shining with red light, and their eyes looked a little dull. Boom. The city wall was vulnerable to this fire magic and collapsed. All the soldiers above fell to the ground, some fell into sludge, and some were buried directly in the flames and died in the fire. Aclea was caught by the guards underneath at a critical moment, so that she wouldn't die as soon as she touched the dragon. Fister was a high-level knight at any rate. He would not die directly under the city wall, but fell to the ground in a rather embarrassed manner. No, the gap between the enemy and ourselves is too great, and they can't win at all. Fister understood the current situation of Own. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos and quickly escape, so as not to lose his life. It's not worth it to get yourself in for a small city-state. Fister, who had figured out everything, was ready. His eyes were on the horse, and he would get on the horse and run away whenever he had a chance. Zillai's 4-ring magic just now was mainly for smashing the city wall, so as long as it was a person with some strength, it would not be killed by the wave of magic. No, we can't win at all, we can't win the gods of the world. The faces of some soldiers were filled with despair, and the weapons in their hands fell to the ground. They didn't even have the heart to resist. Go, for the great Noxus. Kill. Noxus's battle axe is about to fall on you. Compared with the frustration and helplessness of the Aclea soldiers, the monsters of Noxus are extremely excited, they are going to burn and snatch. An assailant lifted a machete to remove the soldier's head, then opened his own blood basin and began to chew. Splashing white brains and bright red blood wine are on this battlefield. The armored dragon turtle and the desert ronin are not so cruel. In their eyes, they should capture this city-state first, and then enjoy the food. Shilin did not stop this. They are the empire of monsters, and the monsters need a catharsis. Although he was planning to recruit a few talented human soldiers, at a glance, the number of humans in this city-state was quite large. When the monsters are almost killed, it will not be too late to stop at the exit. Just as Shilin was looking at the battlefield situation in the sky, the keen dragon eye saw a human being fleeing in a hurry. The breath of this human being is okay, it's just a bit weak. Arena, this person will give you a try. Shilin smiled slightly, and finally found a guy with a breath similar to Olena. As a red dragon, he knew everything about his breath. The soldiers underneath are declining one by one, and some ordinary second ring magic can easily defeat the soldiers. It's not suitable for training Olena at all. Although Olena is a magician who has not participated in actual combat, she can already perform 3-ring magic. The strength of the 3-ring magician can hang high-level knights, provided that they do not get close by high-level knights and pay attention to the consumption of magic power. Ah, me. Olena hesitated a little. Zillai said in a huff. Arena, you are the only human magician in Noxus. You have to show those monsters who look down on you, your strength is very strong. I know your majesty, but can you find me a month and a half first? When Olena finished saying this, Her blushing face was like a shy lotus, and she looked petite and cute. Shilin almost forgot that Olenna was in a vacuum. The top priority now should be to find Olenna for a month and a half before letting her fight. But just in case the fister below escapes. Wall of dilemma, wall of dilemma. Shilin then threw a 4-ring soil control magic down. Fister didn't notice that the dragon in the sky had been eyeing him. Now he was sitting on a white horse, just about to ride the horse. Boom. Sudden. The earth gradually shook, a thick earth wall surrounded him, and there were no dead ends around him. What is this? Fist was taken aback, raised his long sword and slashed towards the earth wall. Clang. The earth wall was like a copper wall and an iron wall, and Fister did not break the earth wall. On the contrary, he was shocked, and the sword also dropped out of his hand and fell to the ground. The other side. Ah, run. The dragon is here. Everyone, run. Shilin directly bypassed the front line and flew to the rear of the city-state of Akalia. His huge posture made countless civilians scream again and again. One by one was so frightened that he was pissing and panicked. The city streets were all panicked civilians, and the streets were completely blocked. Go to the store and find one by yourself. Shilin calmly landed in front of a clothing store, and put Olenna down. This kind of thing doesn't look good on others, so you still have to go to the store to get a new one. As soon as Olenna touched the ground with her feet, she ran in shyly. Live like a frightened rabbit. But after a while, Olenna walked out of the shop, and the street was already empty. Even if Shilin hadn't taken any action until now, the civilians didn't dare to stay in place and watch. People had gone to the building a long time ago. It's just that Shilin didn't worry about civilians running away at all. He just cast a huge enveloping magic, surrounding the entire city-state of Akiria. Ding! Alice in the city-state of Akalia is detected, the self-disciplined princess plundering plan can be launched. Princess! A hint of surprise flashed in Shilin's eyes, and he had almost forgotten since, 173, this is a city-state. Although the city-state is small, as long as the king here has a daughter, there is definitely a princess. Arena, you go to deal with the person I'm trapped, I have to do it beforehand. As soon as Shilin's voice fell, before Olenna could speak, she flapped her generous dragon wings and flew toward the front. His Majesty, Olenna yelled, and found that Shilin ignored her and stepped on her feet angrily. Really, I have to run over by myself. After a few complaints, Olenna stepped on her own short leg and ran towards Fister. Behind the castle, Princess Alyssa, we should go. Faith received the news from the front, and Akalia was defeated. Although the battle is not over yet, it is impossible to win. Alicia looked forward worriedly, and whispered at the corner of her mouth, Father, he will be fine, right? Oh, Princess Alyssa, your Majesty is so bad, let's go first. You are your Majesty's favorite child, he hopes you can live, we should go. Faith sighed. As a veteran of Akiria, he never expected that today would be the day of the demise of the city-state of Akiria. Marquis Faith, you leave with your own relatives. I want to live and die with the city-state of Akiria and my father. Elisa clenched her lower lip, her eyes filled with determination. She loves Lisa Ackley will never abandon the country and run away. If you don't love Princess Lisa, you must follow us. This is what your Majesty has given us. And Princess Alicia, think about it, if you don't live, your Majesty Ackley will not look down. In order to persuade Elisa to leave, Faith can only use Elisa's affection for her father. Sure enough, hearing Faith's words, there was a trace of entanglement in Alicia's unwavering eyes. Upon seeing this, Faith hurriedly continued to persuade. Princess Elisa, we should leave without delay, otherwise we won't be able to get out when the dragon comes. Furthermore, Princess Alyssa, you are the daughter of His Majesty Akiria, and as long as you are still alive, the city-state of Akiria will always exist. Eliza's faith finally shaken at this moment, yes. I am the daughter of my father. As long as I can live, the city-state of Akiria may be re-established. Marquis Faith, please. Alicia bends down and pleads. Good, Your Royal Highness. Without further ado, let's leave immediately. Faith was about to ask the knights to lead the horses, but a sound squeezed them into motion. What are you going to do? Ants. A huge figure stood in front of the city-state. The other side. Taste. Boom. Just as Fister was at a loss for the earth wall, the earth wall broke apart by itself and turned into small stones that fell on the ground. This is. Pfister was overjoyed, and he really couldn't be killed. Just as he was about to get up and mount again, a tender voice came. Stop. Who? Pfister hurriedly listened to it and saw a cute little girl standing in front of him. When it was clear that it was a little girl, Pfister breathed a sigh of relief and said amusedly, "Who I thought it was, I didn't expect it to be a yellow-haired girl. Hurry up and get out of here. Otherwise be careful I kill you." With that said, Pfister raised his sword and aimed at Olenna. Frost Ball. Olenna didn't talk nonsense with Pfister though. Katerina once taught her that when facing a well-matched enemy, never talk nonsense. When you defeat this enemy, you have time to humiliate him. The heart of the Frost Staff's heart's demon orb shone coldly, and snowflakes appeared inexplicably around Olenna. Then quickly condensed into a snowball composed of ice and snow. Tweeted, 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 tweeted. The snowball flew off suddenly like a cannonball, and came to Pfister in the blink of an eye. Small bugs. As a high-level knight, how could Fist be defeated by this ordinary second-ring magic? Brandishing the sharp sword in his hand, he smashed Snowball's head on. Taste. The quality of the sharp sword is too bad, and the blade was hit by a snowball in a bumpy gap. If only the old night gun was still there. Pfister's mouth was a little numb by the snowball, but fortunately, the little girl didn't seem to be so proficient in magic. But at the same time, he was still a little shocked. A human being unexpectedly joined the empire of monsters. Even if some human women would become one of the dragon's wealth, they would not be on the battlefield. After all, who has ever seen a dragon fight and scatter his own treasure? Pfister wanted to delve into something, but the current situation does not allow him to think more. Go to hell. He chose to take the initiative. As long as he is close, the magician will definitely die when facing the knight. Olenna obviously also saw Fist's intentions. His Royal Highness Katerina said that the body of a magician is the most fragile. If someone finds a chance to get close, he will undoubtedly die. Frost attenuation. A breath of extreme cold spread from Olenna's feet, and everything he passed was frozen by frost. Night charge. Pfister hurriedly used his own night fighting skills. Night fighting skills. It is a skill that every knight will learn. Similar to how a magician learns magic, but the knight's fighting skills are not as gorgeous as the magician. In front of Pfister, the surrounding airflow swept up, burning with the fiery heat of the flame. The tip of the blade was burnt red, and the frost that had hit was swallowed by this hot breath. Humph, it's just that Pfister has forgotten that the mount under him is just an ordinary horse. The horse felt that his body was being burned by the flames. Where there was still the mind to continue charging, the painful whole body went crazy, and tried to fall off Fest, who was sitting on his body. Oops, this is not a mount for knights. Pfister also discovered this important thing, but it was too late for him. The horse's strong power was caught off guard, and Pfister was directly thrown off, and his back fell to the floor. The burning pain hit immediately. Pfister's face was immediately distorted. Good chance. Olenna was overjoyed. She didn't expect it to go so smoothly the first time she played. Immediately Olenna held up the frost staff. Storm. Boom rumbling. The dark clouds in the sky gathered quickly, and the sky thunder rolled. Lights flashed continuously between the clouds, as if they were ready. Olenna controlled the frost staff and slowly pointed towards Fist, who was lying on the ground in front. Boom. The thunder and lightning slammed down. Do not. Pfister was horrified to discover that the other party was actually using three-ring magic. In the battle just now, he always thought Olenna was just a second-ring magician. Although the second-ring magician can indeed use the third-ring magic, the chance of using it is less than 1%. He didn't believe that the little girl in front of him was betting on a 1% success rate. This is definitely a three-ring magician. Boom. The thunder suddenly sprang out, and with the surrounding rain, it smashed into Fist's back. Pfister's body burst open in an instant, without even making a scream. A little bit of blood splashed on Olenna's face. Olenna's pupils widened instantly, and she killed herself. The other side. Princess Alyssa, run. You can enter the Ionian forest ahead. This is a dragon's territory. That red dragon absolutely dare not follow in. A knight shouted from behind Alyssa. Alyssa was riding a horse at this time, and a knight followed behind her. As for the others, it has been resolved by Shilin. Booming, Shilin's huge body ran rampant in the woods, like a dragon-shaped tank. Wherever the heavy steps passed, it was like a comet falling to the ground, leaving deep potholes. Originally, Shilin was going to grab Alicia. But then he made a temporary intention. He wanted to use this time to test the dragon in the Ionian forest. Therefore, Shilin deliberately opened a hole in front of Alicia. Alicia and the knight who were fleeing in a panic didn't even see that Shilin let them run deliberately. Are you going to enter the Ionian forest? Shilin noticed this and immediately rose into the air. Fireball, fireball. Boom, a huge fireball suddenly gathered and appeared above Shilin's head. This group of raging fire swiftly carried a gust of wind towards the knight. Princess, run. The knight noticed this, and he didn't have time to block and dodge. Boom. As the fireball fell on the position of the knight and the horse disappeared in place, leaving only a pile of black scum. Do not. Alicia was sad when she saw this, but she couldn't stop. The hope of the city-state of Acrea lies in her. Snapped. A long whip fell on the horse's butt, and the horse speeded up its limbs like a madness and rushed into the Ionian forest ahead. I want to see what dragon you are. Shilin smiled playfully, and the flames behind him ignited the entire forest. He can stop Alicia at any time, and with his own long way, the horse never dared to move. Ahead, Alicia was about to wave her long whip again, but she didn't think that there was a rock under it. Puff! The horse's forelimbs were caught off guard against the rock, and the horse turned over in an instant. Alicia was thrown off her horse and rolled all the way into the Ionian forest. Snapped! Shilin rushed there, crushed the horse with one foot and entered the Ionian forest. Here, that evil dragon should not dare to follow up. Alicia pressed her right arm and frowned her brows in pain. But then she still has one important thing to do, how to survive in the dragon forest. Puff! Before Alicia could feel the rest of her life, a little sun appeared behind her. The red dragon is here. You run fast, Alicia. Through the words of the knight in front, Shilin had already learned the name of this princess, Alicia. You, how dare you enter here, aren't you afraid to start a war between giant dragons? Eliza's eyes widened unbelievably. She never thought that this red dragon would be so reckless. This is the territory of another dragon. You may have mistaken Alicia, the noble red dragon is never afraid of challenges. Shilin dismissed it. Yes, you are a red dragon. Eliza fell to her knees helplessly. The red dragon was one of the most arrogant creatures. How could they be afraid of this? They like to provoke war most. Are you coming? Shilin sensed a group of creatures approaching here. What? After hearing what Shilin said, Alicia was a little puzzled. What is coming? The next moment, get out of the red dragon for me. This is the territory of Lord Ionia. A group of goblins walked out from around, wearing well-equipped weapons, holding spears and broadswords in their hands. It can be seen here that the Ionian forest is rich in resources. Even the equipment of this cannon fodder goblin is so good. HMPH, who will give you these guts, dare to greet me like this? Boom! The powerful Longway wave spread from Shilin and swept towards the Ionian forest. The goblins were suddenly terrified and their hairs horrified. The vast dragon power pressed on them like a tide, crushing them all on the ground, kissing the earth. How dare this red dragon do this? To release Longway on another dragon's territory, that means directly declaring war on the other side. You, taste. What else did the goblin want to say, but did not expect Shilin's Longway to suddenly increase. The bones on the body were pressed and displaced, and the bones creaked and collided. Dare to guess the hunting letter and bark in front of me, who gave you the courage? Dirty wild dog, JFEs. Golfs, the god of goblin belief, his predecessor was also a goblin. It was just by chance that he acquired a godhead and became the first and only goblin god. Since then, many goblins have believed in Gophus. I hope that J-Faith can give them the opportunity to become gods. Shilin dared to call J-Faith's name so directly, but he did not put J-Faith to put in one's eyes at all. Such a trash god can't even do the projection of the netherworld. Shilin naturally need not be afraid of him. What's more, there is a 5-color dragon Queen Tiamat on top of his head. Need to be afraid of a gooface. The goblin was shivering with fright, and did not dare to make any rebuttals. The red dragon on the other side dared to insult even their god of faith. What can these humble goblins say? HMPH, you said, do I need to get the consent of the chopsticks to enter the Ionian forest? Shilin's flame-emitting forelimbs were in front of the goblins. The hot breath scared the goblins a long time ago. There are even some goblins who have been scared to death. At this moment, a deer man in armor walked out. The deer man, a rare powerful monster in the forest, walks upright. He is 3 meters tall, burly and huge, with a deer head and an omnivorous monster. The lost deer glanced at the goblin who was kneeling on the ground. Just when he wanted to speak, the mountain of Longway descended on his shoulder. Bang! The Millerin naturally couldn't hold on to kneel to the ground. This time Shilin's Longway was fully fired. Ant, who allowed you to stand and watch me, climb for me? Shilin roared. Since this time is a temptation, it might as well make a big deal. Respectful dragon, we, the Lord of Ionia, said that you can take this woman away, but don't continue to show your power in the forest. Otherwise, the Lord of Ionia will come to challenge you immediately. The fan deer gritted his teeth and confided with difficulty the news he wanted to convey. Challenge. The red dragon is never afraid of challenges, is the Lord of Ionia. You let such a humble monster out of the conversation between the eye dragons. Shilin's words have used enough energy, almost spreading throughout the forest. I was so provocative. If this giant dragon can bear it, he will immediately lead the monster army to fight over without saying a word. Roar, young red dragon. Don't go too far. Sure enough, the dragon here couldn't help it anymore, and the terrible dragon power came from the depths of the forest. The two Longway shares crossed together and collided with a wave of energy fluctuations. The goblins in the center of the fluctuations were the most miserable, all of them were squeezed into flesh. You have finally come out. I thought the owner here was a giant dragon with a shrunken head. Shilin mocked without hesitation. I think you were humbling you when you were young, but in the end I didn't expect you to be so arrogant. A voice came from the depths of the forest. Ha, Qianrang, why, don't you plan to show up to see you at this time? Shilin's intimidating dragon pupils widened, as if they wanted to see the depths of the woods through the dense woods. Neat, ha ha ha, you are not qualified enough, only if you have the ability to call the flame dragon Mother Danier, she is qualified to meet me, as for you. Humph. Longway, who was originally equal to Shilin, instantly overwhelmed Shilin. Reached the level of the young dragon. Shilin frowned, but he didn't expect that the other party looked really capable. Moreover, the other party Jingran still uttered wild words, and only the flame dragon mother was qualified to meet him. Denier is an ancient dragon. If you can meet her, isn't it also an ancient dragon? Really, Denier is my mother. Since you want to meet her, I will contact her immediately. It only takes some time, and her mother will be back soon. Shilin grabbed the sluggish Elisa on the ground, spread the dragon wings and rushed to the sky. He glanced at the depths of the forest from high above, and then left the Ionian forest. It is hard to guess whether the other party is Ji Yulong Shilin. If he guesses wrong, he will really capsize. Just in case, Shilin decided to spread it first. But he is still full of doubts about this giant dragon. Never before has an ancient dragon's temper so good. A young dragon provoked you for no reason, and you even let it go. It's just that this Longway is true. After thinking for a moment in the sky, Shilin returned to the city-state of Akiria. At this time, the Akalia city-state war has ended. Remnant's broken sword ran across the ground, and several bones lay on the ground attracting Jiao mosquito bites, and they were all desolate to the eye. The blood stains on the stone walls of each house, the flowers have been trampled and mutilated, and their vitality has been destroyed. As dusk is approaching, the wolf howling of the desert werewolf gradually rises. Wow, Sky Magazine. Why, Alyssa couldn't believe her own eyes, and she burst into crystal-clear tears as big as peas. This drop of tears wanted to irrigate the earth like rain, and bring a touch of life to the earth. War is like that, see blood. With a wave of Shilin's hand, a fire dragon loomed in the sky, and the flames shone on the battlefield below. The monsters who had been looting quieted down. The surviving humans were imprisoned and put into animal cages. The monster army knew that their carnival had passed. Shilin said before the battle, "When the monster sees this fire dragon signal, you have to stop no matter what you are doing. Can no longer continue to burn, kill and snatch. Seeing that the monster underneath was very obedient, Shilin nodded in satisfaction. If you are not obedient, stay in this battlefield forever. The desert werewolf walked among the wreckage of the city, using his sensitive nose to sniff for any hidden humans around him. The attackers piled up dead bodies on the ground. The companions are buried directly, but the humans are piled up together, waiting for Shilin's opinion. After all, human beings are a rare meal for monsters. Even if there are only some broken limbs left, they are reluctant to throw them away. Arena, what are you doing? Shilin saw Olena in the sky, and then landed next to Olena. Your Majesty. Olena raised her head at this moment, her face already covered with tears. Why is it? Shilin wondered. I killed that man. Olena didn't expect her storm to be so powerful. What is this? Look there. Shilin pushed Olena lightly and looked around her vision. There are wreckage everywhere. This is war. There is no war without bloodshed. If you don't kill him, if he finds opportunities and flaws, it will be you who will die. Olena didn't know what to say for a moment. Just now, she had been in a daze. At this moment, she saw the surrounding scene. Bibidoo was terribly dead. This is also the first time Olena has realized the ferocity of monsters. In the past, monsters were indistinguishable from humans in Olena's eyes. Talking and laughing while in Noxus, I didn't expect them on the battlefield to be the most real monsters. Ruthless, cruel, tyrannical. This is our Noxus, what do you think? Shilin used hypnotism to feint Elisa, and she kept talking about her in her ear. Olena shook her head, she didn't know what to say. To treat our own people, we worship the strong and respect our brothers and sisters, because we are a family. When dealing with outsiders, we wield a sharp knife and hunt them because they are the enemy. Shilin said. I see. Olena seemed to understand something in her heart. This is Noxus. Mutu, are you dead? If you don't die, collect trophies for me. Shilin did not continue to say anything to Olena, but turned to shout at the monster army. No, Majesty, how could your most loyal wild dog die easily? Mutu got out of the monster group excitedly. Hurry up and collect the spoils if you don't die. Shilin said in a bad mood. Relax, Your Majesty, leave everything to me. Mutu led the desert werewolf to turn around and search for the loot. Seeing Mutu leaving, Shilin said again, Peeps, how many prisoners are left? Return to Your Majesty, there are still more than 30,000 human captives left. We are locked in a wooden cage. I will bring you snacks right away. Peeps thought Shilin was hungry. After all, compared with monsters, the red dragon is also a famous existence that cannibalize people. No, you take it. Forget it, Ramos, you take the armored dragon turtle to distinguish the humans. One for the old, one for the underage, one for the female, and one for the male. Shilin handed this task to Ramos. The main reason was that the attackers were too greedy. Let them take care of the humans. What if they are greedy and eat a few more bites? Understand, Your Majesty. Ramos led the armored dragon turtle to the rear. Peeps was a little unhappy when he saw Ramos left. He blamed himself for not taking the attackers, so that His Majesty was not at ease to hand over the humans to them. Your Majesty, do we need to do anything? Salmon continued to express himself. In the combat effectiveness just now, the Shazong people are also quite meritorious. But Shilin didn't see it. In order to let Shilin understand the importance of owning, Salmon took the initiative to jump out to attract Shilin's attention. You follow the armored dragon turtle to guard all human beings. Shilin knew what Salmon was thinking. Although he didn't watch the battle just now, he saw the cactus thorns in the surrounding area, and he could guess that Shazong people were brave enough to kill the enemy in the battlefield. Okay, Your Majesty. Samon's face was a little lonely. He thought Shilin was automatically ignoring him. Why is Your Majesty not there when my sandworm tribe is fighting bloody battles? Next time, I must rush to perform again while Your Majesty is still there. In the end, all monsters perform their duties and clean up the battlefield. Only the assailant had nothing to do, acting as Shilin's bodyguard and surrounded him. But in terms of Shilin's strength, what is a bodyguard? Can it be eaten? Peeps kept feeling in his heart that next time he had to order the Blade tribe in advance. The other brothers were all killing the enemy, and only the attacker threw down one and couldn't wait to chew. It's so undisciplined. However, the attackers cannot be completely blamed. After all, the environment in which the attackers live makes them unable to control their own appetite. Finally, for the first time there is so much food, can you not eat more? Your Majesty, who is the woman in your hand? For some reason, Olenna seemed to sense a hint of danger from this woman. Alyssa, the princess of the city-state of Akiria. Shilin thought for a moment and decided to tell Elisa's true identity. Princess. Olenna frowned first, then thought of her grandma's words. According to legend, the evil dragon likes to plunder the princesses in the human kingdom the most. I only thought it was a story at first, but I didn't expect it to be true. Even His Majesty Shilin, whom he admired, likes to plunder the princess. If Shilin could hear what Olenna was thinking inside, then he would definitely say, I'm just plundering attributes. Princess Alicia is so beautiful. Even though Olenna thought Elisa was an enemy, she couldn't help but praise her. Although he is not bad, Xiaohei's sharp horns are flawed. Where is it as graceful as Alyssa, concave and convex? Is it beautiful? I don't think you are as good looking as Olenna. What Shilin said was the truth. If you have to compete for beauty, Olenna is indeed better. After all, Olenna is the incarnation of the goddess of luck. It's not pretty. It's just too small now, there is no advantage in the figure, and it is crushed to death by Elisa. But Olenna didn't know Shilin was telling the truth, she really only thought Shilin was praising her. Suddenly the whole person hummed like a train, and then a cloud of white gas came out. The blush has already covered her entire cheek. Olenna covered her face, her voice whispered, Your Majesty, are you serious? Of course, why did I lie to you? Even though Olenna's voice was very small, Shilin's sharp dragon ears could hear her clearly. Olenna can't wait to drill a hole in, oops. Your Majesty praises himself so much, does Your Majesty really like him? A big illusion in life, does that person like me? In fact, Shilin didn't mean anything in that respect, he just judged and appreciated based on his appearance. However, no matter how long listened to all directions, he couldn't hear the thoughts in people's hearts. Soon, in about half an hour, the monsters finished their trophies. Your Majesty, we offer you trophies. Mutu brought the desert werewolves to the gold and silver treasures of the city-state of Akiria, which is the dragon's favorite. Even Shilin can't control the greed from the bottom of my heart. The shiny things are best seen. Good job, Mutu. Shilin opened his mouth and swallowed the gold and silver treasures into his second stomach. There was a crashing sound, and the gold coins reflected the firelight on Shilin's body, exuding golden light. The monsters around didn't even dare to have a trace of greed, and all bowed their heads. Not only dragons love wealth, but also intelligent monsters. They like gold and silver treasures just like human beings love money, and they can trade with these things. But the dragon likes gold and silver treasures only. Simple, this thing is shining. It took more than 5 minutes to swallow the treasure before Shilin swallowed it into his stomach. Some of them couldn't fit. He simply used the desert werewolf to pull the cart away, and couldn't stay a single one. He raised his head and glanced at the human beings in the dark, more than 30,000. Unexpectedly, after the monsters fight like this, there will be more than 30,000 left, which is simply a miracle. In fact, if it hadn't been for the attacker's low appetite, he would have eaten it all up long ago. I will rest here tonight and leave for Noxus early tomorrow morning. Shilin saw that the monsters were a little tired, and it was not very good to drive at night. Anyway, he wasn't in a hurry, he didn't lead the monster army back at all. You are not allowed to touch the living people, you can only eat the residue, you know. Shilin pointed to the human corpses that were more than 10 meters high, all of which had been gnawed by the attackers. Who said the attacker was too greedy? Regardless of whether he could eat it or not, every corpse was given a bite, resulting in not even a complete corpse. When the monsters heard it, they all breathed a sigh of relief, and they were finally able to rest. Especially the desert werewolves, they also like to eat human flesh. In order to show their own combat power, they do not kill and eat like attackers, but specialize in combat. In fact, they are also very hungry. Shilin took Olenna, took Elisa and left the place, and flew towards the castle behind. As the master left, the monsters once again became a mess, scrambling to snatch the pile of corpses. The sound of chewing and swallowing made many people in the cage incontinent. Especially for the children, Their parents were locked on the other side, and they had never seen such a horrible scene. Everyone was scared to cry, and shouts filled the whole situation. But the monsters didn't pay any attention at all, their attention was all on the corpse. Only the armored dragon turtle did not step forward to snatch, but silently guarded the cage to prevent humans from escaping. Please, please, my child is only a week after birth, he needs a mother. A pale woman stretched out her hand in despair, trying to touch the cage in front of her. In that cage is a child who was born not long after her. The child was crying in the wooden cage, and the baby was the child who was not scared by the scene to cry. They cry only because they are hungry. Roar, are you looking for death? Your Majesty said, separate you. An armored dragon turtle stepped forward and slapped the woman's arm, but he didn't have much strength. After all, Shilin said, the people in the cage must be foolproof. Please, he is only a child, he was born within a week, and he is hungry. Seeing that there seemed to be a chance to communicate, the woman hurriedly shouted and explained. What if you are hungry? Stretch out your arm again, I'll bite it off for you. The armored dragon turtle opened his mouth fiercely, exposing his own blood basin. But under the glorious maternal love, the woman is not afraid of dragon turtle in armor. She still stubbornly stretches out her arm, trying to touch the child in the next cage. All the other women around wanted to stop her, but she couldn't help her too much. The armor-clad dragon turtle was a little annoyed, and he warned twice that this tiny human dared to commit another crime. Just as the armored dragon turtle was about to bite off the woman's arm, Ramos noticed the situation here. What's the matter? Ramos walked over with heavy steps. The armored dragon turtle saw that the leader was coming, and hurriedly said, Leader Ramos, this woman always wants to reach out and touch the baby in the cage next to the mold. I have warned twice, but she still won't listen, I'm about to bite her arm. Ramos frowned slightly. He thought it was a glutton, but he didn't expect it to be a provocation by human beings. Please, the child is really hungry. The woman raised her head tremblingly, tears already wet her collar. I will give you one last chance and withdraw your hands. Ramos did not agree to the woman's plea, and His Majesty's order was a death order. No. The woman stubbornly shook her head, and still stretched out her right hand. Interesting. Ramos didn't expect this human being to be so arrogant, and he was about to open the cage and drag the woman out. You have to let her feed the daughter to the child, otherwise if the child starves to death, you will definitely be punished by your own Majesty. At this time, a little girl in the cage stood up and said. Such a little girl looks only 7 or 8 years old, but those eyes are not like the eyes that a child should have. Full of spiritual chi and cleverness, like the eyes of an elf, shining brightly. Cut, as long as I kill them all. Ramos disdainfully said. There are so many human beings, how can your Majesty remember everyone? If you do this, then I will tell your Majesty tomorrow and let him know what you are doing. A hint of sly flashed in the little girl's eyes. Little girl, do you think you are holding me tight? I can't beat you and kill you too. Ramos sneered, mocking the little girl's innocence and ignorance. To sue you, you have to live until tomorrow to be useful. Really, but everyone around has seen it, are you sure they won't complain? Unless you kill everyone, you will never be able to keep this secret. The little girl knew that this group of people had been scared by the monsters a long time ago, so how dare to come forward and testify for herself? So she takes advantage of the fact that there are more people, and you can guarantee that someone will keep the secret for you. But can you guarantee that a group of people will help you keep this secret? Do you dare to threaten me? Ramos squatted down, a pair of sharp claws grabbed the outside pole of the wooden cage, and his yellow-brown eyes stared at the little girl. I'm not a threat, and the child has been crying for about 10 minutes. The little girl smiled, and it seemed that she didn't feel a trace of fear. Humph, puff. Ramos blasted a stone wall next to him with an angry punch and opened the woman's cage. Go and feed your patients. Thank you. The woman first said thank you to Ramos, and then gave the little girl a grateful look. The little girl smiled slightly and said nothing. I'm here, baby, don't cry. The woman immediately went into the child's cage and undressed to feed the girl. Seeing the woman feeding the cub, Ramos walked to the little girl. You are very good, human. Thank you for your compliment. The little girl bowed modestly. Ramos clenched his teeth. he wanted to tear the girl to pieces, but he didn't dare to do that. As the little girl said, a group of people around are watching. In case someone who doesn't have eyesight filed a complaint, think about the strength of His Majesty Red Dragon, he must be dead and not even scum left. And the soul has to be played with by your majesty. Because before that, he sacrificed his soul to Shilin. What's your name? Ramos asked, sitting on the ground. It's only the name, so I won't bother you. The little girl's heart beats faster, she doesn't want to be thought of by a big tortoise. No, I care about this very much, after all, you impress me deeply. Ramos smiled coldly, feeling scared. Human. My name is Cross L. Cross looked up and down the burly figure of Ramos, and then said the name of Own. She was a little afraid of Ramos becoming angry, and she really beat herself to death regardless of the consequences. At that time, regardless of whether anyone complained, he would be mashed. It makes no sense at all. Cross, I remember you. Cross, I will talk to you before your majesty. The corners of Ramos' mouth rose slightly. What? Klaus was a little shocked. Ramos actually wanted to mention himself in front of the Red Dragon, which was terrible. It is not a good thing to let the Red Dragon know that he is. After Ramos saw that Cross was finally not calm, he finally felt a little happy in his heart. As expected, His Majesty was even more terrifying, and his name could scare others. You must be joking, right? Klaus only prayed that Ramos was really joking with herself. Just kidding. Ramos, never kidding. Ramos stood up and walked away. Wait, Lord Ramos, wait. Klaus tried his best to stop Ramos, but Ramos pretended not to hear. For this, Klaus wanted to cry without tears. She really shouldn't talk too much. But when she turned her head and saw the happy women and children, she couldn't help but smile. It was worth it to do it herself. Although it may eventually sell myself. Oh. Chloe sighed and sat on the floor with her arms around her legs. I don't know what will happen to me tomorrow. Thank you. After feeding the child, the woman wrapped her head around the child, and then said when she passed by Chloe. No thanks, we are all human beings and we must help each other. Cross smiled again. The woman didn't say much, turned around and entered the own wooden cage. The armored dragon turtle closed the wooden cage angrily. There are so many human shit, I really want to kill them all. Inside the castle, Your Majesty, is she really okay like this? Olenna said, looking at Alicia lying on the bed. At this time Alicia has put on a new costume. Of course, this was changed by Olenna. And Olenna took a bath for Elisa. But Olenna also found in the bath that Elisa seemed to be in a coma. Don't worry, hypnotism will only let her get a good night's sleep. Shilin's huge body naturally couldn't enter the inside of the castle. At this moment, Shilin was lying on the castle, using the castle as a sofa. He is now communicating with Olenna through a window. Hypnosis. Your Majesty, how many rings of magic are this? Looking at Elisa on the bed, Olenna became curious about this magic. A cyclic magic depends on the magician's own magic power to determine its effect. The greater the magic power, the longer the person who is recruited will sleep. Like the magic in me, Elisa can spend a lifetime in sleep unless I wake her up with awakening magic. If it were you, she should be able to sleep for half a day. Shilin felt the magic power on Olenna's body and guessed. The magic power of the dragon is very huge, and Shilin is a different kind. The magic power in the body is 5 times that of the ordinary dragon. Because Shilin's body is larger, the corresponding container is also larger. It's only been a long time. Olenna did not expect her magic power to be so weak. I thought that own magic could keep Elisa sleeping for a year. Don't be discouraged, Olenna, you have just started, you can do this after you become proficient and grow physically. Shilin encouraged. I understand, Your Majesty. Olenna stretched her back. Yeah, Your Majesty, it's time for me to go to bed. Then go to sleep. We will go back to Noxus tomorrow morning. There are a lot of things waiting for us. Shilin had to find a way to deal with the more than 30,000 prisoners. In his opinion, Noxus must be built into the same league. There is no dispute or discrimination between each race. As long as the strong are, they will receive the worship and admiration of all races. Thinking about the future of Noxus, Shilin closed his red eyes. For a while, the castle fell into darkness. It's just that with every breath of Shilin, the flame on his body will light up, revealing the light in the dark night. Like the dark red sun in the night, it is eye-catching. Morning. Boom. Shilin felt the sun shine on the dragon scales and quickly opened his eyes. With his awakening, the crushed castle fell one by one with stones. Olena, who was still sleeping, was awakened by Shilin's movement. Her eyes were a little blurred. She reached out her hand to wipe the saliva from the corner of her mouth, and opened her red lips and let out a white breath. It's morning. Olena was still a little sleepy, but when she saw Shilin waking up through the window, she immediately cheered up and got up to wash. There are no daily necessities that humans need in Noxus. This time I finally came. Olena must take away some practical things. For example, Princess Alyssa's beautiful clothes. It's just that Olena must not be able to wear it, she is too young. But she didn't do it for herself. A princess who went to Noxus, which was full of monsters, would definitely not be used to being in that life. Preparing some things from the past for her can also help her find a sense of belonging. Then Olena walked out of the castle in large bags. What are you doing with so many things? Shilin turned around to see Olena, who was a little bit puzzled. Olena immediately explained to Shilin. Well, that's true. I'll ask them to bring something back later. At this time, Shilin also remembered that 30,000 humans would always bring some daily necessities to Noxus to improve the quality of life in Noxus. By the way, let human beings get used to it, they just changed a place to live. Noxus is their new home. Shilin grabbed Alicia and Olena and flew forward. Ahead, as early as when the sun rose, Mutu took the wolf cub to clean up the surrounding environment. Finally, I was checking whether there were any humans left out. It can be seen from this that Mutu, who has newly joined Noxus, very much hopes that the Spike tribe can truly integrate into Noxus. After all, the Spike tribe has brought a huge loss to Noxus Lee's tribe. The other three tribes do not regard the Wolfia tribe. So Mutu has been proving that the Spike tribe is loyal to Noxus. Puff! Shilin fell in front of the monster legion, raising layers of dust. His Majesty. Mewtwo hurriedly stepped forward and bowed down, playing the dog incisively and vividly. Well, wake everyone up, and by the way, put away the things commonly used by humans. We are ready to set off and return to Noxus. Shilin looked at the desert werewolves of the Wolfang tribe. Unexpectedly, these werewolves all regained consciousness. He thought that each of the monsters was sleeping, and he could see that the desert werewolves were very diligent. At least before the other monsters wake up, they are already doing errands. Mutu nodded, and was about to wake everyone up, and found that the monsters were waking up one after another. After all, Shilin landed in front of them, and the breath on his body was not hidden. When he smelled the iconic sulfuric acid smell on the red dragon, who would dare to continue sleeping? Isn't that looking for death? Seeing everyone waking up, Mutu found the leader and told them what Shilin had said. Then, after the monster army finally searched for some daily necessities, it stuffed its brain into the wooden cage and bumped into a human being. Seeing this, Shilin shook his head speechlessly. It turned out to be a monster. But it doesn't matter. Anyway, these monsters will change over time. Roar! Return to Noxus. Shilin roared Long Yin, and took the lead to wave the dragon wings into the sky. Woohoo! I finally went back. Noxus, we are back. Haha, I don't know if my mother-in-law has a baby. Cut, we have only been out for 4 or 5 days, how could it be so fast? The monsters moved forward talking and laughing, but the humans in the wooden cage were at a loss. According to what the monsters say, they seem to be going to their base camp. Because of the complex race of Noxus, Shilin told all the monsters in Noxus to speak the lingua franca of the mainland, and he did the same. Although dragon language is the native language of the dragon tribe, in fact the common language is often used by the dragon tribe. From the perspective of the dragon clan, dragon language can only be used when using dragon language magic. In the eyes of dragons, dragon language is a symbol of noble and mysterious. Other creatures are not even qualified to listen. The most important thing is that the dragons are afraid of other biological experts in the dragon language, although the dragon language is difficult and obscure. But it does not mean that other biology will not. Among human beings, the magician also has a hidden powerful karma, the dragon-speaking magician. When the dragon whisper magician casts magic, he uses the dragon whisper to release magic, and the power is ascending to a human level. Even if it is not comparable to the orthodox dragon language magic, it is still very powerful. In the profession of magician, the undead magician is the most mysterious, and the dragon-speaking magician is the most powerful. What Katrina taught Olena is dragon whisper magic, but dragon whisper magic consumes too much magic power. Unless you have a special physique, if you use dragon whisper magic once, your body's magic power will be drained. So Olena didn't use dragon whisper magic when fighting Fister, and the bonus achievement with Frost Staff was enough. Your Majesty, how do you deal with this group of humans? Olena lay in Shilin's paws, hesitated for a while, and decided to ask Shilin's opinion. Let them join Noxus, Shilin said. There are 30,000 human beings, and there are tens of thousands of women, old people and children who cannot fight. This is a comparable combat power. If everyone in the city-state of Acria could fight, the monster army would not be able to attack without Shilin's help. There are many civilians in the city-state of Akalia, and there are only 20,000 people who can fight. In addition, they have gone through a civil war, and they are not opponents of the monster army at all. Then what if those people don't want it? Olena asked cautiously. No, just kill it. Shilin decided that Olena's question was a bit strange, and all the prisoners who were unwilling to surrender could not be killed. Noxus can't keep so many dead prisoners. Rather than run out of food to feed them, it is better to feed them to the cubs. Kill Arena glanced at the human in the wooden cage below. They were all human beings. One was held in the palm of the hand by a giant dragon, and the other was indeed kept in a wooden cage, like a livestock. The way back was very fast. The monster army did not rest, but kept on going. After only a day and a half, they drove back to Noxus without stopping. Wow! The desert werewolves roared up to the sky slightly tired. Soon there was movement in Noxus, and the monsters stuck out their heads to welcome the Emperor's return. Katerina, Shilin called little sister's name. But Katerina did not respond. Your Majesty, His Royal Highness Katerina fell asleep. At this time, Akfo hurried out of the water and came to the arid desert. Sleeping. My strength is growing very fast. Shilin raised her brows, and she didn't expect Katalina's strength to grow so fast. After only 4 or 5 days away, her strength will have a huge ascension. Your Majesty, are these all the food you brought back from the money? Akfor noticed the humans in the wooden cage. This was the first time in his life that he saw so many humans, enough for him to eat for half a year. What food? They are not food, they will all be subjects of Noxus in the future. Shilin said irritably. How come the monsters of Noxus say they eat when they see humans? In other words, can human beings really live well in Noxus? Maybe one day in the dark, go to the toilet and eat humans. Mutu. To rectify Noxus, I have something to announce and bring humans over. Shilin took Olena, grabbed Elisa and walked to the Noxus center high seat. Mutu immediately nodded and bowed, turned and ordered to go down. Noxus Central. Here at this time, all kinds of wailing and roars continue. When we wailed, human beings seemed to have seen the end of their own, and began to cry bitterly. The roar is the greedy drool left by the monsters. It looks like a life of 9 deaths. Cross tried his best to squeeze towards the crowd, for fear that other monsters would stick their claws in through the gaps in the cage. It is a monster empire of the Red Dragon, with many races and fierce and violent personality. Why is there a human girl beside the dragon? At this time, Klaus noticed the little girl next to the Red Dragon. The other party looked the same size as her own. Why would she be by Honglong's side, and she seemed to be alive and well? At the same time, she also saw Princess Alicia who was in a coma next to her, and she didn't know what would happen to the princess. In this regard, Cross can do nothing. Although he was often praised for being smart and clever since he was a child, he was in the face of absolute strength. All cleverness is just in vain. High seat. Shilin looked down at the group of humans and all the monsters who had gathered. This time on the expedition, Noxus returned in triumph. The city-state of Acria was conquered by Noxus. The more than 30,000 humans here today are captured by us. What do you think? Shilin watched the expressions of the monsters. Kill them. Your Majesty, my stomach is already empty. We can use them for barbecue. The monsters have a variety of words, but they cannot do without a central point that eats up humans. In the wooden cage, the adults bowed their heads in despair and hugged each other. They were going to be buried in the belly of the monster. The children all cried when they heard it, and they were frightened to cry. But have you ever thought that Noxus is still under construction? Shilin wanted to see if the monsters had a smartphone. As a result, all the monsters scratched their heads and looked at Shilin with puzzled faces. What does your majesty mean by saying this? Oh. Shilin was a little disappointed. Among so many monsters, none had a brain. Do you want to subdue us? A naive voice rang from the crowd. Even if it was quickly overwhelmed by the monster's voice, Shilin still heard it. Quiet. Shilin's voice resounded throughout Noxus. Countless monsters who were arguing closed their mouths one by one. Noxus, which was already full of enthusiasm, suddenly became silent, and no one dared to make a sound. It also includes crying children. He was frightened and dull by the feint of dragon power that Shilin radiated. Who said it just now? Stand up. Seeing that the surrounding area had calmed down, Shilin asked the crowd calmly. The monsters looked at each other. Is anyone taking the opportunity to insult your majesty? Yes, it's me. Cross stood up hesitantly. She didn't expect the dragon's ears to be so sharp. In such a noisy voice, I could still hear a word whispered by myself. You know, the monsters around don't even know that they have spoken. Are you afraid? Shilin said funny. Cross shook her head hurriedly, knelt down on her knees and said, no, it's your stalwart body, which makes me seem to see a god. Really? CHBB. Shilin didn't expect that a girl who seemed so young would have learned how to slap long fart. Yes. Klaus didn't know what to do. How would the red dragon punish herself? Don't be nervous, I don't eat people. Shilin comforted Klaus's mind. When Klaus heard Shilin's words, her heart was not very angry. Dragons don't eat, and they are strange. It is estimated that only a kid would believe this sentence. But thinking so in my heart, of course Klaus couldn't say that. I understand. Why did you ask me to come out? Klaus wanted to slap herself a little bit. What more to say? You repeat what you just said. Shilin curled up the dragon's tail, sat on the tail, and looked at Klaus with interest. Klaus swallowed. Although he is bolder than ordinary people, but this is a giant dragon. The most terrifying creature in the entire Western fantasy continent. I said, do you want to subdue us? Of course, Chloe dared not follow Shilin's words and told the truth. Anyway, this sentence has been heard by the dragon just now. If you are lying, then you must finish playing. How do you think that I want to subdue you? Shilin's eyes lit up, and it seemed that the little girl's wisdom was a little bit beyond ordinary people. Because Klaus kept her head down in fear and didn't notice Shilin's eyes, her heart was already overwhelmed. Why did the dragon ask himself so? Is it to make excuses to eat yourself? No, his strength is so rubbish. Does the dragon need to find a reason if he wants to eat him? But why does the dragon ask? Is it possible that you really want to subdue them? It's a pity that I don't have the courage to look up at the dragon's eyes and expressions, otherwise I can guess what the dragon thinks. After thinking about it for a while, Klaus decided to tell the truth. If she was wrong, she would survive. Great dragon, did I tell you now? Klaus asked Shilin cautiously. Go ahead, let me see what you think. Shilin changed his position and lay down on the side. The monsters' gazes all looked at Klaus. How could this human being have such a powerful force that made His Majesty pay attention to her so much? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.